Mount Everest, the highest peak on Earth, a symbol of ultimate adventure, but also a graveyard in the clouds. In May 1996, what was supposed to be a routine climb turned into one of the deadliest disasters in Everest's history. Experienced climbers, elite guides, and thrill seekers faced a brutal storm, human errors, and impossible decisions. Some made it down, others were left behind forever. So, what really happened on Everest in 1996? And could it have been avoided? By the mid-1990s, climbing Everest had become big business. Elite commercial expeditions led by skilled guides promised to take even amateur climbers to the top of the world for the right price. Two of the most respected guides, Rob Hall of Adventure Consultants and Scott Fisher of Mountain Madness, were leading separate teams to the summit in May 1996. Their climbers included a mix of seasoned mountaineers and ambitious novices, each paying up to $65,000 for their shot at history. But what they didn't know was that their dream was about to turn into a nightmare. On May 10, 1996, the teams set off for the final push to the summit. But delays began early. A traffic jam formed near the summit as multiple teams crowded the narrow, dangerous path known as the Hillary Step. Bottlenecks meant climbers wasted precious oxygen, and by the time many reached the peak, they were already in the danger zone. Despite the golden rule of Everest, turn around by 2 p.m., many climbers ignored the warning signs. Some reached the summit as late as 4 p.m., leaving them exposed to the deadliest threat of all, time. And then the storm hit. A fierce blizzard swept in, bringing hurricane-force winds and blinding snow. Climbers who were already exhausted and disoriented suddenly found themselves trapped in the dark, unable to see their way down. Rob Hall, the highly experienced guide, was stranded high above at the south summit with a climber, Doug Hansen, who had run out of oxygen. Hall refused to leave him behind. He radioed for help, but conditions were too extreme for a rescue. His final radio call to his pregnant wife, Jan Arnold, remains one of the most heartbreaking moments in mountaineering history. Meanwhile, Scott Fisher, the leader of Mountain Madness, was also in trouble. Fatigued and suffering from altitude sickness, he struggled to descend. His team tried to help, but the conditions made it impossible to get him down. He would never leave the mountain. As the storm raged, some climbers defied the odds. One of them was Beck Weathers, who had been left for dead. With severe frostbite and snow blindness, he spent 18 hours in the freezing cold, yet somehow he woke up. Driven by pure survival instinct, he stumbled back to camp, his face and hands frozen beyond recognition. His survival is still considered one of the greatest Everest miracles. Another survivor, John Krakauer, a journalist covering the expedition, later wrote the famous book Into Thin Air, which exposed the chaotic decisions, lack of preparation, and commercialization of Everest. By the time the storm cleared, 8 climbers were dead, including both expedition leaders, Rob Hall and Scott Fisher. The disaster sent shockwaves through the climbing world, leading to major changes in Everest expeditions. New regulations were introduced to limit overcrowding. The use of bottled oxygen and better weather forecasting became a priority. And most importantly, the dangers of Everest were never underestimated again. Yet, despite all the warnings, climbers still push their limits on Everest. In the years since, many more have perished on its icy slopes. The mountain remains a place where ambition meets mortality, where the line between glory and tragedy is razor thin. The 1996 Everest disaster is a chilling reminder that nature always has the final say. Even with modern gear and expert guides, Everest remains one of the most dangerous places on Earth. So the question remains, why do people still risk everything to stand on top of the world? Is it the thrill, the challenge, or something deeper? Would you ever take that risk?